My fiancée mocked my mom as a nobody at dinner. I said, "Good to know." The next morning, I canceled the $8,000 wedding deposit I had paid for her. When her parents learned they'd lost their dream venue, she finally realized who had been funding her perfect life. Original post. I, 34M, had been with my fiancée Brooke, 31F, for 4 years. We met at a local brewery in Austin, Texas. Brooke worked in public relations for a big tech firm downtown. She was always perfectly dressed, always knew the right things to say, and loved being the center of attention. I, on the other hand, run a heavy equipment rental business. We supply bulldozers, excavators, and cranes to construction sites all over the state. It's dirty, loud, and not at all glamorous. But I built it myself, and it's very profitable. I live simply. I drive an F-150, wear work boots most days, and live in a normal house in the suburbs. Brooke came from a completely different world. Her parents, Arthur and Patricia, lived in a huge mansion in a wealthy neighborhood in Dallas. They were the kind of people who threw charity galas and spent their summers in Europe. They were always polite to me, but I could tell they thought I was beneath them. Because I didn't work in an office or wear a suit, they treated my business like it was a small plumbing company. Brooke would sometimes defend me, but she also started pushing me to buy a nicer car or wear expensive watches so I would fit in better with her friends. Everything got worse when we got engaged 8 months ago. Planning the wedding turned into a nightmare. Brooke and her mother, Patricia, took total control. They wanted a huge, expensive wedding at the Magnolia Estate, a famous, historic plantation outside of Houston. It's the kind of place where rich politicians and celebrities get married. The cost just to rent the place was crazy. When it came time to pay for the venue, Arthur invited me to his country club for a drink. He gave me a long speech about how tradition says the bride's family pays, but because Brooke's dream wedding was so big, they expected me to step up. He called it an investment in our new life. I agreed to pay for the venue deposit, the food, and the honeymoon, which ended up being about 70% of the total cost. I loved Brooke and I could afford it, even though I thought the whole thing was a waste of money. I quietly wired the $12,000 non-refundable deposit straight to the Magnolia Estate. Brooke and her parents were so happy, acting like they had pulled it off all by themselves. My mom, Linda, 62F, is the exact opposite of Patricia. She was a nurse for 40 years and lives in a small, cozy house in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She raised me by herself after my dad left when I was a baby. She's practical, tough, and the kindest person I know. She was so happy about the wedding, but she felt really nervous about meeting Brooke's wealthy family. Last weekend, we had a dinner for the parents to meet. It was supposed to be a nice, relaxed evening. But Brooke insisted we go to Laura, a super expensive, fancy restaurant downtown that you have to book months in advance. The dinner was awful from the minute we sat down. My mom wore a nice, simple green dress. She looked great, but I saw Patricia look her up and down in a way that made my blood boil. The talking was awkward. Arthur only talked about his stock portfolio and his new boat, while my mom tried to talk about her gardening club. The worst part happened during dessert. My mom, trying to be friendly and talk about the wedding, asked Patricia about the flowers. My mom mentioned that she had a friend who grew beautiful wildflowers on a farm and offered to help make some small centerpieces to save some money. Patricia let out a loud, fake laugh. "Oh, Linda, that's cute, but we are using royal blooms for the flowers. They fly in special roses from Ecuador. I don't think some farm weeds would really match our theme." My mom looked like she had been slapped. Her face turned bright red. I just thought, since weddings cost so much. Brooke rolled her eyes and sighed really loudly. "Mom, just ignore her. You know she doesn't get this stuff. She's a nobody from a small town. Just let her have her little ideas." The whole table went completely quiet. Even Arthur looked shocked. Tears filled my mom's eyes, and she quickly got up and walked to the bathroom. I looked at Brooke, waiting for her to say she was sorry. Instead, she just took a sip of her wine, looking annoyed that the conversation had stopped. "Did you really just call my mother a nobody?" I asked. My voice was very quiet, but I was furious. Brooke waved her hand like it was no big deal. "Oh, don't overreact. You know what I meant. She just doesn't understand how things work at this level. It's tiring having to explain everything to her." "Good to know," I said. It was all I could say without yelling. I stood up, threw enough cash on the table to pay for my mom and me, and walked away. I waited outside the bathroom for my mom. told her we were leaving, and drove her back to my house. She cried the whole drive home. I felt sick to my stomach. I stayed awake all night sitting in my living room. I thought about the last 4 years. I thought about all the little insults, the demands for money, and the total lack of respect. I finally saw the truth. Brooke didn't love me. She loved the comfortable life I gave her while she and her parents looked down on me. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I called the Magnolia estate. Because my name was the only one on the contract for the deposit, and because the wedding was still 6 months away, I found a loophole. The deposit was technically non-refundable, but they had a clause that allowed the payer to transfer the credit to another event or cancel the date and receive an 80% refund if they rebooked the date within 30 days. I told them to cancel the date immediately. The manager confirmed it was done. Then, I started packing Brooke's things. She was still at her apartment downtown. I didn't pack everything, just enough for a few weeks, and put the bags by the front door. At noon, I called Brooke. "Hey," she said, sounding perfectly normal. "Are we still on for lunch?" "No," I said. "We aren't on for anything. We're done." There was a pause. "What are you talking about? Are you still mad about last night? You need to calm down." "I am calm," I told her. "I've never been calmer. You called my mother a nobody. You let your family treat me like an ATM while looking down their noses at me. It's over. I packed some of your bags. Come get them." "You can't be serious," she yelled. "We have a wedding in 6 months. The invitations are about to go out." "Not anymore," I said. "I canceled the venue this morning." "You what?" she screamed. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You can't do that. My parents paid for that." "No, Brooke," I said quietly. "I paid for that. Remember? Your dad asked me to step up. So I did. I wired the $12,000. And today, I canceled it. Have fun telling Arthur and Patricia they don't have a venue anymore. Goodbye, Brooke." I hung up and blocked her number. Update 1. It's been a week, and my phone has been exploding. Brooke showed up at my house 2 hours after I called her. She was hysterical. She banged on the door, screaming that I was ruining her life and humiliating her in front of her family. I didn't open the door. I just handed her bags out through the garage and told her to leave before I called the police. Later that day, Arthur called me from a different number. He tried his usual bossy tone. "Now listen here, son," he started. "Brooke is very upset. You need to call the venue back right now and fix this mistake." "It's not a mistake, Arthur," I said, "and I won't be fixing it. I paid for it, and I canceled it. If you want the Magnolia estate so badly, you can call them and pay the deposit yourself." He started stuttering. Well, we have our money tied up in investments right now. You made a commitment." "My commitment was to a woman who respected me and my family," I replied. "Brooke isn't that woman. We're done." I hung up on him, too. It turns out, Arthur and Patricia are completely broke. I found this out from a mutual friend who works in finance. They live in a huge house and drive fancy cars, but they are drowning in debt. They were relying on me to pay for the big things for the wedding so they could keep up their wealthy image for their friends. Without my money, they can't afford the Magnolia estate. They can't even afford a local country club. Brooke has been sending me long emails begging for forgiveness, saying she was stressed and didn't mean what she said about my mom. But then, in the same email, she complains about how embarrassed she is that they have to cancel the caterer, which I was also supposed to pay for. She still only cares about how this looks to other people. My mom is doing much better. I took her out for a nice, quiet dinner at her favorite diner to cheer her up. I told her what I did, and while she felt a little bad that the wedding was off, she hugged me and said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Update 2. It's been a month now. The fallout has been incredible to watch, mostly from a distance. Brooke and her parents try to save face. They sent out an email to all the guests saying the wedding was postponed due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts with the venue. But rumors started spreading fast. One of Brooke's bridesmaids, who always thought Brooke was a bit of a snob, started telling people the truth, that I dumped her because she insulted my mother, and that I took back the money I put down for the venue. The news spread through their social circle like wildfire. Patricia was apparently uninvited from her charity committee because she couldn't pay her membership dues. Arthur had to sell his boat to cover some immediate debts. Brooke is furious. She showed up at my heavy equipment yard last week, demanding to talk. I had my security guard ask her to leave. She stood in the parking lot yelling about how I had ruined her reputation and how she was a laughingstock. "You ruined your own reputation Brooke, I told her from the gate. Next time, don't bite the hand that feeds your fake lifestyle. She finally left, crying. I've been spending a lot of time focusing on my business. We just landed a massive contract to supply equipment for a new highway project. It's going to be my most profitable year yet. I'm also planning a long vacation for my mom and me to Hawaii next month. She's always wanted to go, and now I have plenty of extra money to make it happen. Final update. It's been 6 months. Yesterday was supposed to be our wedding day. I spent the day on a beach in Maui with my mom, drinking mai tais and watching the sunset. It was perfect. I heard through the grapevine that Brooke is now living back at home with Arthur and Patricia. Because of their financial problems, they had to downsize from their mansion to a much smaller house in a different city. Brooke lost her job in PR because she missed so much work dealing with the trauma of the canceled wedding. She sent me one last text from a new number a few days ago. It just said, "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply, but as I sat on the beach with the woman who raised me, knowing I dodged a massive bullet, I thought to myself, yeah, I really am.